We're live from Lagos, Nigeria. This is News Central. I am Felicity Ezewike. The top stories tonight. Abductors demand 200 million naira ransom for Kwara monarch as troops rescue 6 kidnapped victims in Zamfara. Federal government rejects Atiku's petrol subsidy proposal, describes it as risky policy reversal. And the U.S. prepares fresh sanctions on Iran as Canada-U.S. trade tensions escalate.
Business pension registration rises 24.7% as Lagos pensioners protest 16 years of unpaid arrears.
And in sports news tonight, Nigeria's Edo Queens thrash Niger's Asgard National to open Wafu B Women's Champions League qualifiers in style.
Very glad you're here. Tonight begins in a moment. We'll begin tonight with security matters. Panic has gripped Ibesi community in Osun local government area of Kwara State following the reported abduction of its traditional ruler, Oba Moses Onyiloye. The monarch was abducted late Saturday night after armed men invaded the community. Security agencies are said to have intensified their efforts to locate and rescue the traditional ruler. The abductors have reportedly established contact with members of the monarch's family and are demanding a 200 million naira ransom for his release. Residents remain concerned as security operatives continue efforts to secure the monarch's safe return. To bring us more up to date on this, I'm joined by my colleague Joshua Maraye, who is on standby in Kwara State. Also joining for this conversation is security consultant Dixon Osage. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Joshua, what is the latest information on the condition or whereabouts of the monarch and the response to the 200 million naira demand?
Well, good evening to you, Felicity. A while ago, we were at Ikire in Osun local government area of Kwara State. It will interest you to know that that particular community is a remote community located in Osun local government, and that community is surrounded by bushes, forest, if I may say. And we confirmed from the last wife of Oba Moses Onyiloye, who confirmed to us that on Saturday night, at the wee hours of Saturday night, where they were watching a movie in the sitting room of the king was abducted, stripped naked, and was taken away. We also confirmed from the son of the king, who confirmed to us that these abductors has established communication with the family and they are demanding a ransom payment of 200 million naira. And this family, they are negotiating currently, begging the abductors to reduce the amount that they don't have such. While this is ongoing, the community, which is reliant on agriculture, has not been to their farmland for some days ever since this incident happened. Panic has gripped residents, and they are calling on security agencies as well as the state government to swoop in and to salvage the situation. From what we know, the king is still in the custody of the abductors.
The Kwara State Development Forum has issued a statement regarding the security situation and the series of kidnappings that they've experienced. And they are alleging that the kidnapping has placed a heavy financial burden on residents, many of whom had previously contributed money to rescue victims. Is this the actuality on the ground? Is that what you're hearing as well?
Well, from what we learned, we understand that this particular monarch is the 4th monarch abducted from Kwara State in 2026. This has reflected the troubling trend of armed bandits, if I may say, attacking and going after monarch, placing heavy bounty on this individual. For this community, we confirm that this is the first time that such is happening, and this might serve as a testing water for these armed men who have gone on a kidnapping spree in parts of communities, remote communities in Kwara State. From what we gather, this is the first time it's happening, but we fear that there might be an occurrence if the community members respond positively to the payment of ransom for this particular individual who has been kidnapped, the king of Ibesi community.
Joshua, thank you as always for your coverage. All right, let's bring in Dixon Osagi now. Thank you very much for joining us. We have another prominent community figure being abducted. What is your thinking that makes traditional rulers, targets for kidnapping? And what would you say communities are becoming increasingly vulnerable in this instance?
Felicity, it's disheartening to see our community leaders being abducted by these criminal elements. And I think they've taken, the local community is highly vulnerable, and that's why they are capitalizing on the vulnerable state. Because if you look at this community, there's no effective policing presence, and that is why most of these abductors just, capitalize on that, opportunity. Because when any crime to occur, there must be an opportunity. So for me, the era we are now, we can see these guys going after high-profile personalities, going after community leaders and obas and the head of local communities. So I think the threat has gotten home, and this community people need to establish a youth a security network to see how they can manage the situation in the absence of the Nigerian policing system. Because I tell you, Felicity, this cannot go unchecked. If we don't check this, the village will no longer be a comfort zone for you and I to go and relax during the time of festive period, or maybe we don't want to go home to relax. So they've messed up the urban area, they are messing up the rural areas as well, and they just want to make Nigeria a place to look as if Nigeria is ungovernable.
All right, Dixon, we'll have to actually leave it there because your network is a bit fuzzy. Thank you for speaking with us. We appreciate your time. Troops of the Joint Task Force North West Operation Fasanyama have intercepted 3 suspected gun runners and rescued 6 kidnapped victims in separate operations in Zamfara State. The operations conducted on Sunday also led to the recovery of an AK-1032 rifle, a magazine and 30 rounds of ammunition. The Joint Task Force says troops intercepted a vehicle carrying the suspects along the Kaura-Namoda-Shinkafi Road. The Joint Task Force Media Information Officer, Lieutenant Colonel Aliyu Danja, disclosed this in a statement issued on Monday, adding that a search of the vehicle uncovered the weapons concealed inside a bag of millet. The suspects and recovered items are in military custody as investigations continue. Let's tell you that the Osun State chapter of the All Progressive Congress APC has accused the administration of Governor Ademola Adeleke of aiding suspected hoodlums allegedly involved in violent attacks in Ikire. The party says 5 people were killed in Monday's incident, while several police personnel were also assaulted. Speaking to journalists in Osogbo, the Osun APC Media Cluster Chairman, Oluwafunsho, Fagbohungbe, alleged that the crisis began when suspected hoodlums linked to the Accord party attempted to forcefully take over a motor park. He said 3 commercial drivers and 2 passengers were killed during the violence. The allegations have yet to be independently verified, while the circumstances surrounding the incident remain subject to investigation. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Tonight on News Central. A recap of our top stories now. Abductors demand 200 million naira ransom for Kwara monarch as troops rescue 6 kidnapped victims in Zamfara State. Federal government rejects Atiku's petrol subsidy proposal, describes it as risky policy reversal. Upper shows U.S. prepares fresh sanctions on Iran as Canada-U.S. trade tensions escalate. Now, ahead of elections, the Nigeria police is urging youths in Kogi State to shun political violence, thuggery, drug abuse, and other forms of vices. The call was made during activities marking International Youth Day, which featured a sensitization march and a police-youth dialogue focused on peace, responsible citizenship, and security. The police say they are working with other security agencies and local communities to protect lives and property before, during and after the elections, in line with the Inspector General of Police Community Policing Initiative.
We are going to invite all the political parties for a consultation meeting, which we are going to discuss the peace accord before the campaigns commences in earnest, and also to sensitize the candidates and the political parties on the need to have peaceful campaigns to avoid political thuggery, political violence, and the inter-party clashes, so that we can have a peaceful campaign and eventually a peaceful election.
We should also be mindful of the people around us, because in all of the crime that we experience, most of the perpetrators live in a community. So are you also paying attention to your various communities? Do you know your neighbor? Do you know the new person, the strangers are living in that community?
But develop a model by which students themselves safeguard themselves within the campus. Through education, telling them what security means to them, what security means to their environment.
The federal government and the All Progressive Congress have rejected former Vice President Atiku Abubakar's proposal to restore petrol subsidies if elected president in 2027. Information Minister Mohammed Idris and APC National Chairman Netawe Yelwata described the proposal as a risky policy reversal that could worsen Nigeria's fiscal pressures. Atiku says Nigerians have not benefited enough from savings from subsidy removal and has proposed a targeted and transparent production subsidy to lower petrol prices and support local refining. Idris, however, warned that restoring subsidies could reverse economic gains, weaken investor confidence, and reduce funding for infrastructure, healthcare, education, security, and social protection. He said subsidy removal had released 15.8 trillion naira to federal, state, and local governments between June 2023 and December 2025. Professor Kenneth Ikire is a global financial expert. He joins me now to discuss the controversy surrounding this latest campaign move. All right, thank you very much for being here. Has Nigeria actually seen sufficient economic benefits from the removal of petrol subsidies? And what, in your thinking, would be the likely impact of restoring subsidies and government revenue, inflation, and public spending?
First of all, in the scorecard, we saw the minister say that 15.8 trillion was from, we got that gain from the subsidy removal. I don't think that is 100% correct, because World Bank has repeatedly claimed that 50% of that subsidy never actually got to federal government. They were trapped by NNPC. And of course, you know what happens in their inefficient operations. So we've got to get that figure right when you return what was being, what has disappeared. So the full impact of that review has not actually triggered down to the grassroots, because 50% was trapped by NNPC. The second point, of course, is that you don't subsidize in broad macroeconomic terms, and even in development economics, you don't subsidize consumption. What you subsidize is production. For example, I'll give you an example. You have an import-dependent economy where you are simply exporting your raw material, exporting jobs, and importing poverty. And the maximum you can earn in a value chain, either it's petroleum value chain or gas value chain or food value chain, is 10% of that value chain. And you are coming back to say, go and borrow money, 100% to afford the final refined products. It doesn't make sense, because you're going to be perpetually in debt, perpetually in abject poverty, and unemployment will continue to worsen. Now, the second point is this. The government has actually effectively transferred subsidy from the public sector to the private sector. Dangote subsidizes PMS by 20%. That's why our PMS is about $88.88 per liter, and Ghana is $1.3 Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, $1.7. But if you want to go further down, encourage the refiners by giving them the crude that they need. Within this 19 shipload, you're giving him only 3. So he's importing from outside and then paying premium on the one he gets from Nigeria, and then still subsidize the PMS by 20%. So I think we're on the wrong course with that suggestion. And thirdly, we have to go and open the reports of EFCC that looked at this criminal enterprise called fuel subsidy. We haven't opened those reports, and then they haven't taken any action on all the things that are happening in that enterprise. So, if you want to go for that's that. Then the fourth one is this. You cannot borrow money to pay for subsidy. That is unlawful when you consider fiscal responsibility at 2007. It doesn't recognize that as a legitimate expenditure or as a legitimate borrowing. You cannot borrow money other than for capital expenditure and human resource development, and you're going to use it to pay subsidy. You can't do that. And it's unlawful to actually ask central bank to go and print money to pay for the $500 billion naira required every month by NMPC to pay for subsidy, and then ended up printing 27 trillion naira. That's unlawful. You can't lend, CBN cannot lend more than 10% of the past year's revenue, and it must be repaid within that financial year. So all of those things that have been going on have been stopped by the central bank, by the courtesy of the president, and then you can't take us back into that. You can't. It doesn't make any sense.
I get where you're going with that, but we're looking at some of the, this is campaign season. Everybody has a proposal to put to the people. Article described the federal government claim that petrol subsidy had been abolished as one of the biggest economic fraud. That's on the one side. He also questioned the rationale for providing fiscal incentives to petroleum investors while rejecting what he described as targeted intervention to reduce the burden of high energy costs on households. Your reaction?
Well, when you say energy is very broad. Electricity is part of energy. I can understand the case of electricity because you have cross-subsidy in electricity. Tier 1, Tier 2, 209, 100. So you have the cross-subsidy going on there. But then it is you have to target any subsidy to the people who are producing and processing. You don't target it on consumption because you have no way of measuring consumption. You are creating another criminal enterprise because that's what I started with. Go and see what EFCC found out when they investigate petroleum subsidy. It's unimaginable. Ships that have been decommissioned for about 20 years, we are reported to have been bringing fuel and they're getting you don't want to go there.
I think maybe I didn't get the parts that I actually wanted your response on. He says poor Nigerians, said you're removing the federal government is running a contradictory economic policy that removes support for poor Nigerians while granting tax credit concessions and other incentives to major investors in the petroleum industry. I think that's actually the area aside the household.
Let me explain to you. We are in a market economy. The fundamental thing about market economy is investment. You bring investment, investment creates economic activity. Economic activity creates employment. Employment creates sustainable income, disposable income. And with disposable income, you can pay your way out of poverty, health, education, and the likes. You got to get investment in. Whatever it takes you to incentivize investment to come in, whether foreign or domestic, you got to go there. Because it is when that investment lands that it goes on productive capacity, and then you create a productive economy, and then you have a chance of creating employment. You're reducing poverty sustainably. So that argument doesn't have any limit, any merit. So it is, so that's why they have to encourage investors. If you're also going to ask me what else you need to do, get rid of OPEC, because it's going to be blocking the opportunity for these investors to come in and produce the crude that is required by emerging refining capacity in the country. Look at Dangote, it's going doubling to 40 billion investment. Then you have $50 billion going in Ondo. You have Bua doing 200,000 barrels in Akwa Ibom, and more modular refineries. That's That's where you have to encourage, because that is where you are effectively transferring subsidy to. They are now beginning to subsidize the private sector to provide the subsidy, as Dangote is showing. Is actually de-risk all the transportation network to remove the costs and bring costs down by bringing CNG, 4,000 CNG vehicles. Push the thing, remove federal government. It is actually encouraging criminal enterprise. You shouldn't get there. In fact, federal government should even get out of what do you call this transfer, cash transfer. Push it to state governments. They are getting more money, more than 350% more. Let them do whatever they want. Federal government should exit all these areas and focus on strategic infrastructure and then defense, foreign affairs, and stop, extending our country into all kinds of frivolous areas. We don't need all those.
Professor, thank you very much for obliging us tonight.
Thank you.
Pensioners under the Nigerian Union of Pensioners have taken to the streets in Iyanukpaja, Lagos, protesting what they say are over 16 years of unpaid pension arrears. The pensioners say the protest is a warning protest, urging the authorities to urgently pay their outstanding entitlements. For these senior citizens, the message is simple. They want the benefits they worked for, and they want them now.
Come here today to give the state government a warning protest against our coming model of protest, because our entitlements have not been adequately given to us.
2007, when we were still in service, if these arrears are paid, it will enhance our monthly payment.
My own salary is so ridiculous. It's not even up to 70,000. I retired as a director, retired principal with Lagos State. I was earning 520,000. Now level 17. Now I am earning 58,782 naira.
They have no conscience. If they have conscience, they're supposed to have answered us for a very long time. Initially, I was even against this pension. I can tell you how many times I've written the Lagos State House of Assembly concerning this issue.
We will move down to Abuja to tell the president, call on your son to give us our right. Now, Amsat is warming up to come in. We have our voters card.
Residents of the Tiosa local government area of Lagos State have staged a peaceful protest at the Lagos State House of Assembly over alleged land grabbing involving one Bashir Fakorode. According to the protesters, tensions have heightened following alleged threats against members of the Ojakomo family, said to be the original owners of the disputed land located in Sapata village in Ajino, leaving the family and the wider community concerned about their safety. The Center for Public Accountability and Social Well-being says the community is living in fear and is urging the authorities to take urgent action to prevent the situation from escalating.
The land grabber, in the person of Bashiru Fakorede, is trying to grab the land from them. He's trying to make them leave the land for him. And the family is resolute that they are not here on their own, they are here because the state government has legitimately given the land to them. But he has been going there to harass the people and the family in conjunction with the Nigerian police, NSCDC, and his talks.
An individual raises himself up to start causing problem in the state. We as civil society, this organization this morning, we are saying that no. An injustice to one is an injustice to all. Please, call Arefa Korede to order now. The Lagos State government should please call this man to order. It's becoming too much. It's becoming too much, and we will no longer fold our hand.
Tonight returns with more stories after this very short break. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. The United States is preparing what it describes as a major financial offensive against Iran and countries that continue to maintain economic ties with Tehran. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is expected to announce measures expanding potential secondary sanctions on entities and countries doing business with Iran. The move is aimed at increasing pressure on Tehran over attacks on ships in the Gulf and Red Sea. Washington has also urged China, Iran's biggest buyer of oil, to cooperate with the sanctions effort. Let's also tell you that Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says his government's priority in trade negotiations with the United States is securing the best possible deal for Canadians rather than accepting the agreement at any cost. U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening to impose new tariffs on Canadian vehicles from January 1 as trade tensions between the two neighbors escalate. Carney says Canada will match the U.S. tariffs dollar for dollar from September 8, including levies on steel, dairy products, appliances, and electronics. Both sides had expressed optimism about reaching a deal, but negotiations collapsed after each accused the other of making last-minute demands.
Of our trade negotiations with the United States has always been to get the best deal for Canadians. Never a deal at any price or on any time frame.
To discuss this, we have global policy analyst Alexander Rugen. Von Rugen, thank you very much for joining us all the way from Ontario. Alex, how significant is this new U.S. financial offensive against Iran, and what impact could secondary sanctions have on countries with trade while still trading with the country?
To economic outcasts. They want to make Iran persona non grata for the rest of the world to deal with, in particular China. As of now, China is still getting about 500,000 barrels of oil per day through the Strait of Hormuz. That's down from 1.4 million per day at the height prior to the conflict. With these new sanctions, it's going to hit hard because they're going to go after banks, they're going to go after ship owners, they're going to go after any middlemen that facilitate commerce with Iran. They've particularly attacked the crypto markets in seizing about $500 billion worth of cryptocurrencies, allegedly through trade from Iran. So they've been doing their homework. It's taken this long to get there, and they feel that this is going to be the final throes of isolating Iran to expedite the regime change from within. Recent speeches given by their elected officials indicate that Iran is ready to negotiate. That was much criticized by the right-wing hardliners last week because it was a sign of weakness. And it is a sign of weakness because the interior of the country is imploding. So how this will affect other countries with the sanctions, I guess it's how much they want to embolden themselves into continuing to deal with Iran. Most of the countries have already succumbed, main trading partners, the UAE in particular. They've allegedly seized about $530 billion worth of Iranian assets and businesses. I think that exaggeration, but it's meant to send a message. Turkey, Iraq, Pakistan, those will be affected as well because they have ongoing trade with Iran.
Well, could these measures effectively pressure Iran, really, to change its regional behavior? And, of course, what risk could this strategy create for global oil markets and maritime security?
The impact of closing Hormuz has been greatly diminished. There's been workarounds. We've discussed this before on your show. The workarounds have now been in running here for many months since the start of the conflict. New pipelines are being built by Iraq through Turkey. Saudi Arabia's increasing their flow to the Red Sea. The UAE is bypassing Hormuz and shipping to the Gulf of Oman. At the end of the day, the net impact of the disruption went from 21 million barrels a day probably down to the likes of 7, which is about 7% of the global supply. Now, the impact of that has been positive for other countries. Price of oil is up, price of the value of oil exploration is up, and most particularly, countries that have benefited are in Africa, Uganda, Namibia, Angola, Nigeria as well, for increased productivity pushes to thwart crises like these in the future. Likewise in South America. So it'll be soon forgotten, and the importance of Hormuz will be restricted to landlocked players such as Kuwait, Qatar, possibly Iraq. And they'll lose the impact of what the initial fear was.
On the U.S.-Canada trade relations, how vulnerable are Canadian industries to higher U.S. tariffs, and could the dispute disrupt supply chains across North America or have wider implications for U.S. relations with other allies?
Well, yes. I mean, Canada is the only country, along with China, that have opposed American tariffs. You can't compare Canadian trade to any other country because of our relationship to the States. We have an unprotected border of over 4,500 miles. We have established trade that interlaces Canadian manufacturers with American. Some car parts cross the border as many as 7 times before they end up in a vehicle. They're improved, they're sent, they're improved, they're sent back. To tax that every time through tariffs is a daunting task, and it's inefficient. The tariffs, as I've said earlier, are on the American taxpayer. Tariffs are not imposed on the sending nation. It's rather on the receiving nation. It's a form of tax, only we're not allowed to call it a tax because America has promised no new taxes, so we'll call it a tariff. But it's quite mad, and when I say mad, I'm talking about mutually assured destruction for the industries it affects. That's how closely interlaced Canada is with America, both for power sales, for aluminum, our fertilizer, our timber industry, all huge natural resources which are sent in bulk but create more jobs in the States for upgrading. So the impact on job losses will be on both sides, but it'll be felt more so in America. It should be resolved. It's gotten to the point of tempers flaring. Our premier here in Ontario is making disparaging remarks against Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump has exchanged as well. So we got to let things settle down to let logic and reason prevail.
All right, Alex, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Always.
Tonight returns with business, sports and entertainment news. Do stay with us.
Business, the National Pension Commission registered 143,248 new retirement savings accounts in the first quarter of 2026, representing a 24.7% increase from 114,864 accounts recorded in the previous quarter. The new registrations raised cumulative RSA registrations from 11.04 million at the end of December 2025 to 11.18 million by March 2026. PenCom attributed the growth to improved digital onboarding and sustained public sensitization. Despite the increase, pension coverage remains low, with registered contributions representing about 12.1% of Nigeria's estimated 92 million labor force. Meanwhile, contributors below 40 accounted for 75.31% of new registrations during the quarter. Nigerian National Petroleum Company, I guess we'll take that story in just a moment, but let's turn now to the NGX, where we are seeing the market decline on a softer note today. It's down 11 basis points to 239,000. 85.17. Market capitalization, we have it now at 154 trillion naira. So continuing the bearish run from last week, if you take a look at sectoral performance, financial sectors took the strongest hit. Banking is down 63 basis points, insurance down 53 basis points. Oil and gas and consumer goods and industrial goods, I beg your pardon, are flat, while consumer goods is just down marginally. And that's as much as we can take on business tonight. I am Joanna Mustafa. Up next, sports with Okwe.
In sports news tonight, Edo Queens made a sensational start to their Wafubi CAF Women's Champions League qualifying campaign with a commanding 7-0 victory over AS Garde National of Niger earlier tonight. The Nigerian champions took control early as Chioma Moses opened the scoring in the 5th minute before completing her brace in first-half stoppage time. Edo Queens continued their dominance after the break, with Atume Dusor scoring twice in the 47th and 56th minutes. Amina Oluwafunsho added a 5th in the 62nd minute before Moses completed a hat-trick in the 76th minute. Oluwakemi Adegbuyi rounded off the emphatic victory with a stoppage-time goal. The result gives Edo Queens a huge boost in Group B, which also includes ASEC Mimosas and Ampem Darokwa Ladies. The referee has indicated 4 minutes of additional time as Edo Queens closing on a commanding victory over AS Garde. Now to the Women's World Cup. Nigeria's Falconets have finally departed Abuja for Poland ahead of the 2026 FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup after a visa delay disrupted their original travel plans. The Nigeria Under-20 women's team were initially scheduled to leave on August 20th, but postponed the trip while awaiting the required visas. The delay significantly reduced their preparation time ahead of the tournament, which begins on September 5th. Head coach Moses Aduku and his technical crew will now focus on acclimatization, player recovery, and final tactical preparations upon arrival. Nigeria have featured at every edition of the competition since its inception in 2002 and have finished runners-up twice. The Falconets are drawn in Group F alongside Spain, China, and New Caledonia, with Spain their opening opponent. UEFA President Alexander Ceferin says he has no interest in replacing Gianni Infantino as FIFA president, but warned that the embattled football chief could face a leadership challenge. Infantino has come under pressure over his failed plan to attract private investment into FIFA tournaments, prompting criticism from UEFA and several football federations. Ceferin said he remains committed to UEFA and believes his credibility is stronger without seeking FIFA's top job. However, he suggested Infantino may have to step aside if support from fans, players, coaches, and football bodies continues to decline. If Infantino contests the next FIFA election in Morocco in March, Ceferin expects him to face an opponent. CONCACAF President Victor Montagliani and AFC chief Sheikh Salman bin Ibrahim Al Khalifa are among the names linked with a possible challenge. Now, Arsenal are reportedly considering the sale of winger Gabriel Martinelli, with Saudi Pro League side Al Hilal making a fresh offer for the Brazilian winger. Al Hilal are said to have proposed €55 million plus €4 million in add-ons, while Arsenal are seeking a package closer to €60 million. Martinelli's potential departure could help the Gunners fund another major attacking signing as they continue their pursuit of Atletico Madrid striker Julian Alvarez. Arsenal have already invested heavily in the transfer window, spending close to £200 million on Bruno Guimaraes, Ezri Konza, Piero Hincapié, and Christos Zolis. Meanwhile, Paris Saint-Germain winger Bradley Barcola has emerged as a possible replacement for Martinelli, although Liverpool are also reportedly interested in the French international, setting up a potential transfer battle. Finally on sports, former Wimbledon champion Marketa Vondrousova has appealed her 4-year doping suspension at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The Czech was sanctioned by the International Tennis Integrity Agency for refusing an out-of-competition doping test in December 2025. Her ban runs until June 21, 2030. Vondrousova has not played on the WTA Tour since January and has dropped to 153rd in the world rankings. The 27-year-old insists she has never doped, explaining that fear clouded her judgment when an anti-doping officer arrived at her home. She said the incident reminded her of the 2016 knife attack on compatriot Petra Kvitova. An independent tribunal ruled that Vondrousova had provided no compelling justification for refusing the test. CAS has confirmed the appeal, but no hearing date has been set.
And now in entertainment, Nollywood is mourning following the death of veteran Yoruba actor Taiwo Hassan, popularly known as Agogo. He was 66. Now, Agogo reportedly died after a battle with stage 4 cancer. He was one of the most recognizable faces in Yoruba cinema, with a career spanning decades in film, television, and theater. Reports say he had surgery and was receiving treatment, but he passed away despite efforts to save him. His death comes just days after colleagues and fans raised concerns about his health. Agogo is remembered as one of the pioneers who helped shape modern Yoruba language entertainment. Away from this one, out of course, Africa, Simon Cowell will be off America's Got Talent for several weeks after undergoing routine surgery. The AGT judge and longtime TV personality is said to be recovering and is expected to return once he's fully healed. Cowell is known for his blunt feedback and viral reactions on the show, so his absence will be felt for a few episodes. Sources describe the surgery as routine and say the break is precautionary. Well, those are the biggest stories in entertainment. Of course, I'm Sam Dandy.
And that's all we have for you today. As always, we appreciate your feedback. Please share them with us. Use the number being displayed now on your screen. You can follow us on all social media platforms at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Apple TV, and on YouTube. As always, many thanks for watching. Have a good night.